Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've definitely got a very interesting test, and it's one that I've had a number of you guys really wanting to see here recently. We haven't tested this particular shotgun in a good long while on the channel, so today we're going to do a little bit more of an in-depth test and see what it might actually be capable of or not capable of. So as for that shotgun we got today, I brought out this little guy. This is a New England Firearms Pardner model SB1 410 gauge shotgun, but it's the youth model. It has a 22-inch barrel on it with a fixed full choke that measures out right at a 695 constriction, but the length of pull on this guy is very short. It's probably hard to come across on camera. I do have this pretty thick recoil pad on here to give me like 2 extra inches of length of pull here, because the stock actually ends somewhere right about here. It's just such a tiny setup and it doesn't weigh hardly anything. We've tested it for turkeys before at our usual 40-yard distance, and there are a couple shells that, yes, it is technically good enough to get you a turkey out to 40 yards, but obviously I think we can all agree this is not the ideal turkey 410 setup. However, a lot of people have these little things, especially if you're taking a youth hunter out that's going to be hunting over some decoys at like 20 yards or so, and they are curious as to what these might actually be capable of with a good TSS load. So we're going to do a little testing today at 20, 30, and 40 yards to see what our pattern actually looks like and to get an idea of what it's actually capable of as far as pattern goes. But for the shells that we're going to use to do that test, I figured we needed something that was a pretty good baseline middle of the road, that was pretty easy to find and pretty easy to get at a store or online, and we needed something that we knew was a pretty consistently decent patterning shell. So I decided to go with the new Winchester Longbeard TSS shells. We've tried these a number of times, not through a setup like this, but they've always given us a pretty decent looking 40-yard pattern through a number of different chokes we've tried them through. And you can find these at the store, you can get them online, they're not hard to get, and right now a lot of places are actually having them on sale down in like the low to mid $20 a box range. But these are a 3-inch 13/16 ounce payload of TSS 9s moving about 1100 feet per second. I figured this is a good mix and should give us a pretty decent baseline to work with. So I guess we'll see what the combo is actually able to do. But as for our test today, like I already mentioned earlier, we're going to take 3 shots, one at 20, one at 30, and one at 40 yards. All 3 of those will be through a chronograph as well, so we can get our velocity from the shells. So we'll take all 3 of our shots, and then we'll look at how they all patterned. Now, obviously, I don't expect to see the ultimate turkey performance right here out of the setup, but how capable is a combination like this? Let's go start with our 20-yard target and move our way out and see what kind of results we can actually get. Alright, so we'll take a quick peek at our velocities here before we look at our targets. Our first shot here was 1176, our second shot was 1104, and our third shot was 1153. The boss claim is 1100 feet per second, so considering we averaged at 1144, we are just a little bit over that claim from that 22-inch barrel, but that's pretty typical for what we have seen from these shells, is a little bit over 1100, so still looking perfectly fine for a velocity. But let's go look at our targets and see how capable that little setup actually is. Alright, so now we're down here at all of our targets, and we'll start over here on the right with our 20-yard pattern, and here's what we actually got. And yep, we definitely have a dead turkey there. There are a bunch right around the eyeball right there that would have absolutely gotten the job done. Now, yes, we were just a little bit high. The problem with those old N.E.Fs and H&Rs and stuff, especially the youth model, is the length of pull is so short, or the sight radius just is not great on them, and you really have to bury that front bead almost to where you can't even see it to get your pattern to actually hit where your point of aim is. So we were just a little bit high on that paper, even though I aimed a little low and pretty much buried the bead all the way. But what we see here is what looks like a pretty run-of-the-mill 40-yard 410 turkey pattern. However, this is at 20 yards, so that's definitely going to lead to us opening pattern way up out at a little bit farther ranges. Now, looking in here, we have a pretty decently even core right above that bird's head there. Nothing, to write home about, but hey, that is more than capable enough for a 20-yard turkey pattern all day long. long. There are a couple little splotchy voids and stuff in there, which isn't too surprising considering the setup at all. We do have a couple little strings around the outside edges, so it's not perfect or anything, but hey, that is an absolutely capable 20-yard turkey pattern. And I will go ahead and pop up a 10-inch circle equivalent here in editing so you can see what the core actually looks like. And it's really not bad. I wouldn't hesitate to turkey hunt with that at 20 yards. It's going to do the job just fine. So now we'll move over here to our 30-yard paper, and you can clearly see that things are starting to change a little bit. Yes, we still have a dead turkey. There's one right in front of the eyeball there and a couple more right at the top of the spine there that would have gotten the job done. So yeah, you would have still had a dead turkey there. But once again, we were just a touch high on the paper, so I will go ahead and throw up a 10-inch equivalent circle again so you guys can see what the core does look like. And really, we don't have very much of a core, although it is a little bit hotter in pellets right up here around the top edge of that turkey paper than it is around the rest of the pattern. So is that a capable enough pattern at 30 yards to get the job done? Yes, especially if a couple of these little hotter clump areas actually hit the head or the neck area. That would absolutely be enough to get the job done, but you can really see how far we've opened it up, and we've started to pick up a lot of much more noticeable voids, especially around closer to the edges. And even in our core area, there's a bunch of little gap areas in there now that are not big enough to let a turkey escape through, but we absolutely opened the pattern up. So I would still call this 30-yard capable, but I would call that pretty much max range. I would want to keep it inside of 30, and if a bird were to hang up at 30, then you would still have a good enough pattern to take that shot if you needed to. So now let's move over to our 40-yard pattern here, and things have absolutely started to open up at this point. Now, yeah, we do still have a dead turkey there. There's 4 pellets through the brain and a couple more down there through the bottom of the spine. So, yep, you would have still gotten that turkey. But we really start to see just how broad the pattern is getting, and the inconsistencies are definitely becoming more of a factor here. We have a little bit of a hotter zone right over here off the top right corner of that turkey paper. Even though the overall pattern was centered up, we definitely have a bigger void area over at the top left corner there. There's really not a whole lot of pellets there to work with at all. And around the edges, we pretty much covered most of this pallet-sized turkey target at 40 yards. And that's about what I expected to see. So would it, technically speaking, be good enough to get a turkey at 40 yards with it? Technically, yes, it would be. Would I push it that far? No. But I think that's what a lot of us were already assuming coming into it. This was going to be a 30-yard and in type of setup, but really 20 to 25 yards is kind of where you want to be at. And I would say that is pretty realistic here. Now I will back up here, and in editing, I will pop up 3 side-by-side pictures so you guys can get an idea of what the pattern looks like at those different ranges, all side by side. You can very obviously see the progression, how we opened up the pattern and definitely picked up a number of voids and gap areas and stuff in there. So I'm saying, even though you could get a turkey at 40 with it, keep it inside of 30 yards and you would be just fine. And this is a youth setup, so I think that's pretty realistic. And here's one of the wads out of those shells. They all look very much the same, so nothing special to see, but there's nothing stuck down in there. There's no major damage or anything like that. Looks very much standard, exactly how I would expect it to, so nothing to see here as far as the wad goes. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance right there? I would say, once again, 30 yards and in, you're going to be just fine. Even though it might technically be good enough at 40 to get you a turkey with it, I definitely wouldn't want to push it that far if I didn't have to. And I think that's what a lot of us expected to see. I mean, there's your 20-yard pattern right there, and that's more than capable of taking a turkey all day long. And for a youth hunter, 20 to 25 yards is probably what they're going to be looking at. In a ground blind, over a set of decoys in the corner of a field, that's going to get it done any day of the week. Now, I will say, are these Winchester Longbeard TSS shells the best performing option through a setup like that? That I don't know. I believe when we tested the herder shells at 40 yards through this exact same combination, I think the pattern was a little better at 40 than what these Longbeard TSS loads gave us. So I'm sure there are other shells out there that might perform a little better through this combo, but for a baseline to work from, I think that gives us a pretty good relative idea of what we're looking at here. And really, unless you find some magical combination combination of shell that just shoots lights out through that combination, which is pretty unlikely. You're gonna see some version of this pretty much no matter what shell you get, as long as it's a decent performing shell in of itself. So I think we pretty well got our answer today. 30 yards and in, I wouldn't hesitate. It would be just fine considering what the setup is. So leave all your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Winchester Longbeard 410 shells? Or do you have an old H&R or N.E.F Pardner like that, youth model or standard model or whatever? And if so, have you tested it? And what kind of results have you seen? Would you hunt with this combination if it's giving you patterns like that? And what kind of ranges would you be limited to? And generally, what are your overall thoughts about it today? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.